Star Wars Hunters, for those who don't know by now, is a 4 vs 4 third-person arena combat Star Wars game, where its characters are inspired by iconic Star Wars characters and species, with the likes of a Rebel hero, a Sith, a Wookiee, a Rodian, and more, with others on the way. The game itself is actually set around the time of the Mandalorian TV series, but I'm not sure exactly when, and whilst there is no single player in this game, everything in it is canon and all of the characters have their own stories, and you can see a little bit of this lore with the cosmetics in the game and even in some of the events that come out every week. Now, as the title of this video suggests, I think something needs to stop, and that's people asking for iconic Star Wars characters to come to this game. Now, before I do get into why I think that, make sure you are subscribed to the channel for all things Star Wars Hunters and Star Wars gaming. So to provide a bit more context to this, I've had quite a few comments on my Hunters videos recently asking for the likes of Darth Vader and Luke Skywalker, and all the rest of that to get added into this game, and I honestly do find that a little bit strange. Characters like Vader have been playable in a lot of Star Wars games over the years, and more recently we've been able to play as him in both Battlefront games by DICE, and of course the classics from way back when. Given that we're able to do this, if you want to play as Darth Vader so badly, why don't you actually go and play those games with him in it? Battlefront 2, even though it's been 3 years since content was dropped, is still very popular, so you'll easily be able to play as him in a multiplayer setting. Another point to make about this as well is that if you're using the same characters over and over again in different games, then they will all play pretty similarly. Vader is notoriously a tank, so how he plays in Battlefront is very likely how he'd play in Hunters and every other game, so at what point does the game really become unique if it's just constantly recycling the same characters? I also just think that it would honestly get a little bit boring after a while, as adding characters from all over Star Wars means you can't really tell a story. The story of Hunters, for those that don't know, is that the arena is essentially a competitive sporting event run by Balada the Hutt, and it gets broadcast across the galaxy. Each hunter is given a personality to play whilst they're in the arena to be able to put on a bit of a show, but then outside of the arena they're actually all pretty good friends, and you can see this really well in the Hunters Battle for the Arena novel. Now, I don't normally do this in videos, but I actually really want to challenge you into doing some thinking. Let's take a look at J3DI, for example. His story is that he is a droid that was created by the Mon Calamari hunter in the game called Sprocket, and he was programmed into believing that he is actually a Jedi, so he goes around talking a lot of Jedi nonsense, and because Sprocket is no Jedi himself, he actually gets a few of the quotes wrong, which is actually quite funny. Now, to add a little bit of extra spice to that, obviously J3DI is not Force sensitive, so he can't actually use the Force, but he does have an ability that launches a grapple onto people and pulls them in, a bit like Force Pull, so I think that is a really clever and fun ability. So there's all of that about J3DI which you now know, so what do you genuinely believe is more interesting and compelling? All that stuff that I just said about J3DI, or the 10th multiplayer game starring Luke Skywalker? Personally, I think it's quite an obvious choice, but we all have our own opinions of course, so do feel free to disagree, but I would love to know why. Star Wars Hunters has a really unique opportunity to tell great Star Wars stories through a multiplayer narrative with really unique and exciting characters that the developers have actual creative freedom with, and I'm really excited to see what is produced over what I hope is a long life for the game. So as you can tell, I disagree with the fact that we should have Darth Vader and the likes of that in Star Wars Hunters, but that doesn't mean there isn't room for characters we do already know about. Let's take a look at IG-88 for example. We know that he was destroyed by Boba Fett in The Empire Strikes Back, not that we actually see it, but since he was destroyed there is a lot of scope for someone to go and pick up his parts, put him back together and enter him into the arena. Stuff like that, for example, is absolutely possible and I would love to see that, but you have to be really careful because obviously the game is canon, there is an actual story to it, so if you're to use existing characters in Star Wars for this game, then it has to actually make sense for the story. Anyway guys, I am really curious to hear your thoughts on this whole topic, because it really could go either way, so let me know what you think about it in the comments below. That is going to be it from me today though. Thank you all very much for watching, and may the Force be with you always.